When you think of Eleanor Roosevelt, what's the first image that comes to mind? Probably the classic First Lady, right? But what if I told you that was just scratching the surface? That behind that public image was one of America's sharpest and most important political minds. We're going to dig into the story of a woman who built an incredible philosophy of human rights, not from books, but from her own life experience. So let's get into how it all happened. Just listen to that for a second. This one idea, that dignity and a fair shot at life aren't gifts to be handed down, but something you were born with, was absolutely revolutionary. It was a complete break from the world she grew up in, and honestly, it became the engine for everything she did for the rest of her life. This right here is the key. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to trace how this powerful idea grew. We'll see how a woman who, believe it or not, had zero interest in politics at first, became this force of nature, with a vision that started small, but ended up changing the entire world. To really get how huge of a transformation this was, you have to understand where she started. We're talking about a world that was a million miles away from activism, a beginning that gave no hint, none at all, of the powerhouse she was about to become.
Yeah, those are her own words. Can you believe it? She grew up in a wealthy, high society family where politics just wasn't part of her world. Her focus was on social duties, not social change. The idea that she would one day be shaping global policy, it would have sounded absolutely crazy.
So what was the turning point? Well, a deep personal crisis. Her husband's affair and then his battle with polio basically forced her to build a life of her own. She moved back to New York and fell in with this amazing circle of women activists who saw something in her. They saw she was a brilliant organizer and a great writer. And before you know it, she's an editor, a fundraiser, a leader, fighting to give women a real voice in the Democratic Party. She'd finally found her own world on her own terms. And it's right here, in this new world, that her core philosophy really starts to click into place. She starts to pull away from the old-fashioned ideas she was raised with and moves towards something totally new, something radical. Okay, this is the big shift. You have to understand this. The world she came from ran on this idea of noblesse oblige. Basically, the rich have a duty to be kind to the poor. It's charity. But Eleanor started to see that as a huge problem. And her next step for a woman of her background was just radical. She started to believe that every single person, no matter who they were, had an inherent right to a decent life. This wasn't about the rich being nice. This was about justice for everyone. And she wasn't just, writing essays about this stuff. She wanted to build it. Arthurdale, this housing project for struggling coal miners in West Virginia, became her big experiment. It was her attempt to take these ideas about human dignity and turn them into actual bricks and mortar. Her vision for Arthurdale was incredible for its time. I mean, she insisted on things like indoor plumbing for everyone, a basic dignity that most rural Americans simply didn't have. When someone in the cabinet worried this would make the poor too comfortable, her comeback was legendary. She said that when it comes to simple dignity, there shouldn't be a line between rich and poor. But Arthurdale also taught her a really tough lesson. The community voted to exclude Black families, and instead of giving up, she stared that prejudice right in the face and fought even harder to create similar projects for Black communities. As First Lady, she didn't just play the part of a hostess. No way. She completely redefined the role, turning it into a powerful platform for advocacy. She really became the conscience of the nation, constantly pushing her husband's administration and the entire country to do better. So picture this. It's 1939, and she's facing this huge moral crossroads. The Daughters of the American Revolution, a group she belonged to, refused to let the amazing Black opera singer Marian Anderson perform in their hall. This raises a question we all face at some point, right? What do you do? Do you stay and try to fix things from the inside, or do you leave on principle? Well, her answer was swift, and it was loud. She went straight to her national newspaper column, My Day, and just resigned. Publicly. It was this quiet, dignified, but absolutely thunderous protest against racism. And by doing it so publicly, she forced a national conversation and really cemented her role as a moral compass for the country. Their political partnership was really one of a kind. When activists were pushing for a federal anti-lynching law, FDR told them he couldn't support it publicly because he'd lose the support of Southern Democrats. But then, and this is the amazing part, he turned to Eleanor and said, "You do what you think is right." He got it. He knew that even when his hands were tied politically, she could be his and the nation's conscience. After FDR died in 1945, Look, Eleanor Roosevelt could have just retired. She'd earned it. But that's not what happened. Not even close. President Truman saw what she was capable of and appointed her as a delegate to the brand new United Nations. He gave her a global stage to fight for the philosophy she'd been building for decades.
And this was her masterpiece. The mission was just huge. Create a single document that would define the basic rights of every single human being on the planet. I mean, think about it. The world was just shattered by war and was already freezing into the Cold War. This document was an act of radical hope.
So many people said it was impossible. You had the Soviets on one side, the West on the other. How could they agree on anything? Yet, as the chair of the commission, Eleanor's skill and her sheer moral authority made it happen. She wrangled delegates, she navigated these huge ideological fights, and she guided them toward a consensus on what it means to be human. When the Universal Declaration of Human Rights finally passed, the entire assembly gave her a standing ovation. They all knew she was the only one who could have pulled it off.
So you step back and look at this incredible life, from a socialite who didn't care about politics to literally the first lady of the world. What are we left with? What are the core ideas of her philosophy? And do they still mean anything to us now?
All right, let's break it down. First, real change doesn't come from the top. It's built by organized people demanding their rights. Second, and this is the big one, dignity isn't a gift from the powerful, it's something you're born with, universal. Third, you have to have moral courage. You have to be willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. And finally, her work at the UN proves it. She believed in a common humanity, in rights that belong to all of us, no matter where we live.
Eleanor Roosevelt's entire life was proof of one powerful idea, that the rights we share are so much stronger than the things that divide us. She built her whole philosophy not on some complex theory, but on the simple, radical belief that every single person has worth. So the question she kind of leaves for us is this. In a world that seems so focused on our differences, do we still have the courage to build on what we all share?